They didn't even wait for the corporate ink to dry on my severance package. Less than 3 hours after tech giant Apex Group laid me off from my senior financial analyst role, my late husband's family revoked my security keycards to the Tribeca penthouse. They wiped my access to the retail chain I had spent 5 years building for them, and left my entire life sitting in 2 heavy-duty trash bags on a wet Manhattan sidewalk. It was a calculated, precise eviction. Victoria stood in the high-ceiling foyer of the penthouse, her pristine Chanel trench coat contrasting sharply with the gray rain hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. She didn't look at me. Her sharp, manicured eyes were fixed entirely on the silver-plated Cartier tray where my house keys now lay. "You don't belong here anymore, Megan," Victoria said. Her voice had that flat, aristocratic chill she reserved for low-tier employees. "The lease is under the family estate. Since you no longer possess a steady corporate income to contribute to the monthly maintenance fees, your presence here is an unnecessary liability." Beside her stood Julian, my late husband Ethan's younger brother. He was arrogance personified, tossing a gold Rolex premium lighter from hand to hand. Clink, clink. "Don't take it personally, Megs," Julian chipped in, his white teeth flashing under the designer track lights. "It's just basic corporate restructuring. You lose your day job, you become a bad investment. We can't have an unemployed widow dragging down the Vanguard Retail brand. It looks bad for the board." Ethan had died 2 years ago in a sudden motorcycle accident on the Long Island Expressway. Since then I had poured 80 hours a week into Vanguard Retail, the legacy brick-and-mortar clothing chain his grandfather started. I stabilized their crumbling supply chain. I digitized their inventory. I kept them afloat while Victoria spent the dividends in Aspen and Julian sank millions into failed cryptocurrency startups. I did all of this while holding down my primary corporate job at Apex to pay my own bills, because the family claimed Vanguard couldn't afford to pay me a market-rate executive salary. Yet, I ran your entire operational strategy for 5 years, I said. My voice didn't shake. I kept it low-level, mimicking the tone I used in corporate boardrooms when a multi-million-dollar deal was going south. "I saved Vanguard from Chapter 11 bankruptcy last winter, Julian. You know exactly what my contribution was." Julian laughed. It was a hollow grating sound that echoed off the polished concrete floors. He stepped closer, the smell of expensive cologne and stale vape smoke hitting me. "You were Ethan's wife, Megan. That gave you a temporary pass. But Ethan is gone. And now your corporate shield at Apex is gone too. You're just a line item we're erasing to balance the ledger." People online love reading those dramatic revenge stories, but there is absolutely nothing entertaining about the cold, raw taste of betrayal. If you want to see how this high-stakes chess match unfolds, take a quick second to like and subscribe right now. The real game is just beginning. These greedy heirs thought they had stripped me of everything. They thought my silence was submission. Victoria clicked her tongue, adjusting her diamond-encrusted watch with an impatient flick of her wrist. "Julian, call the building manager. Have the deadbolts replaced immediately. I want the digital code to the private elevator changed before 5 o'clock. She finally turned her gaze to me. Her eyes were dead, like 2 gray marbles pressed into pale dough. "We've already notified the staff at the flagship store on 5th Avenue. Your corporate email has been deactivated. Your name has been completely removed from the building's registry." "And my personal belongings?" I asked, looking past them into the expansive living room. The Italian leather sofas, the custom-built mahogany bookshelves, the modern artwork Ethan and I had chosen together during our honeymoon in Paris. Everything was exactly where we had left it. "Anything purchased with estate funds stays," Victoria stated flatly. "Your clothing and minor personal effects have already been packed by the cleaning crew. They are waiting for you downstairs with the doorman. We are being exceptionally generous by not involving the NYPD for trespassing, Megan. Do not test my patience further." The sheer speed of the execution was staggering. They had been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect moment of vulnerability. My corporate layoff at Apex wasn't the cause of their cruelty. It was simply the green light they needed. With my primary income gone, they assumed I wouldn't have the financial stamina to hire a high-powered attorney to fight them for the estate. They expected me to pack my bags, cry, and disappear quietly into the New York rain. "You have 10 minutes to clear out," Julian said, his smile widening as he tucked the Rolex lighter into his pocket. He walked over to the front door, holding it open with mock chivalry. The freight elevator is down the hall. I suggest you use it. We wouldn't want you making a scene in the main lobby. I looked at him, then at Victoria. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. Hysteria is a luxury for the weak, and I had spent too many years analyzing balance sheets to let emotion cloud my judgment. I picked up my designer handbag, one of the few things I bought with my own salary, and walked toward the exit. As I crossed the threshold, I paused. I turned around and caught Julian's eye. You should have checked the operational logs before you cut my access, Julian. Vanguard's fourth quarter vendor contracts are due next week. Julian waved his hand dismissively. We have a new management team coming in tomorrow, Megs. Real professionals. We'll handle the contracts. I'm sure you will, I murmured. 10 minutes later, I stood under the building's awning, watching the heavy rain bounce off the black asphalt. 2 industrial trash bags sat at my feet, containing my clothes and a few framed photographs of Ethan. The doorman, a kind older man named Frank, looked at me with deep sympathy. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Vance, Frank whispered, keeping his eyes on the lobby desk. Management told us we couldn't help you. If Victoria sees us assisting you, she'll have us fired by sunset. It's okay, Frank, I replied, giving him a tight, reassuring smile. I can manage. I dragged the heavy bags to the muddy curb and hailed a yellow cab. The driver stayed inside, completely refusing to help me load them into the trunk. I hoisted them in myself, my sore muscles straining, the freezing rainwater soaking straight through my expensive thin silk blouse. I climbed into the cold, dark back seat, the bitter scent of damp vinyl filling my lungs. Where to, lady? The driver asked, checking his stained, cracked rearview mirror. I pulled out my phone and dialed Arthur Pendleton, Ethan's grandfather's trusted personal attorney. Arthur, I whispered, staring out at the blurred neon city lights. They just locked me out. Let's activate the trap immediately. The Starlight Motel in Astoria didn't have a doorman. It had a bulletproof glass partition at the front desk, and a buzzing neon sign that flickered like a dying pulse. I dragged the 2 black trash bags across the stained linoleum floor of room 214. The air inside was thick with the artificial scent of pine cleaner masking decades of stale tobacco. I dropped the bags by the sagging queen bed and sat down. My silk blouse was plastered to my skin, cold and heavy. I didn't turn on the lights. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the dark television screen. 2 hours ago, I was managing a multi-million-dollar corporate retail portfolio. Now I was counting the cash in my wallet. $342. My primary bank account, a joint checking account that Ethan and I had used, had been locked an hour ago. A text notification from Chase confirmed it. Account access suspended pending probate review requested by Vanguard Estate LLC. They were thorough. I'll give Victoria that. She didn't just want me out of the apartment. She wanted me paralyzed. My phone vibrated in my palm. The screen lit up with Arthur Pendleton's name. I pressed it to my ear. Megan. Arthur's voice was raspy, seasoned by 40 years of corporate law, but there was a sharp edge of anger in it tonight. Are you somewhere safe? I'm in a motel in Queens, I said. I leaned my head against the cracked faux leather headboard. They froze the main checking account. Victoria used the probate clause from Ethan's old estate filing. A heavy silence stretched over the line. I could hear the faint rustle of legal pads on his end. She's moving faster than we anticipated. She filed an emergency injunction at the Saugus Court at 4:15 today. She's claiming you committed financial malfeasance during your tenure as acting director of Vanguard. She's using that to justify locking you out of all family assets. Malfeasance. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. I literally kept their payroll from bouncing for 24 months out of my own pocket. It doesn't matter what the truth is right now, Megan. In the eyes of the court, until a judge reviews the books, you are a hostile third party. But she made a critical error. Arthur paused, his tone dropping an octave. She thinks Vanguard Retail owns the operational entity. She doesn't know about the foundation structure your husband built before the accident. We meet tomorrow morning at 9, I said, my eyes tracking a water stain on the ceiling. Show me the paperwork, Arthur. Show me exactly how we strip them bare. Get some sleep, kid. You're going to need your wits. The line went dead. I didn't sleep. By midnight, the digital smear campaign began. My LinkedIn app started blowing up with notifications. Then my personal email. Victoria hadn't just limited her attack to the courtroom. She was obliterating my professional livelihood. I opened an email forwarded to me by a regional supplier I had worked with for 3 years. The header read, Urgent Operational Update, Vanguard Retail Group. Please be advised that effective immediately, Megan Vance is no longer associated with Vanguard Retail Group or any of its subsidiaries. Recent internal audits have revealed severe operational irregularities and unauthorized financial data manipulation conducted during her unauthorized tenure. Vanguard Retail is currently working with legal counsel to address these discrepancies. Any professional communication with Ms. Vance regarding Vanguard property or accounts is strictly prohibited. It was signed by Victoria Vance, Managing Trustee, and Julian Vance, Chief Executive Officer. Chief Executive Officer. The title made my stomach turn. Julian couldn't even read a basic cash flow statement without getting a headache. Yet here he was, occupying the chair I had earned with sweat and sleepless nights. I opened my laptop, using my phone's hotspot since the motel's Wi-Fi was non-existent. I logged into my personal email and looked at the responses rolling in from the extended family network. Ethan's aunts, uncles, and cousins, people I had hosted for Thanksgiving, people whose medical bills Ethan and I had quietly subsidized, were already falling in line. I always knew she was trouble. A comment from Ethan's Aunt Beatrice read on a private family thread. Marrying a corporate climber from a middle-class background was Ethan's biggest mistake. She cleaned him out while he was alive, and now she's trying to steal from his mother. Another cousin replied. Good riddance. Victoria said she caught her trying to wire funds out of the corporate account right after she got fired from her day job. Absolutely disgusting behavior. They were writing the narrative. In their eyes, I was the parasitic outsider who had been caught red-handed. The greedy heirs were framing themselves as the victims protecting their grandfather's legacy. My phone pinged again. A notification from an executive recruiter I had been talking to about a new role at a major fashion house in Soho. Hi Megan. Given the recent press release and industry updates from Vanguard Group, we think it's best to pause our search for your placement at this time. We wish you the best. Blackballed. In less than 6 hours, they had effectively destroyed my reputation in the New York retail sector. If I tried to apply for a financial role anywhere in the tri-state area tomorrow, this email blast would pop up like a toxic warning label. They weren't just kicking me out of the penthouse, they were systematically ensuring I could never earn enough to fight back. At 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. Julian had posted a live Instagram video. I tapped it. Blaring hip-hop and clinking crystal filled the dark room. The background was unmistakable. The private VIP lounge of Vanguard's flagship store on 5th Avenue. Julian was center frame, his arm draped carelessly over a sleek Manhattan commercial real estate broker. His face was flushed red from too much alcohol, his expensive silk tie completely loosened. Big things happening tonight. Julian shouted, slurring his words. The old regime is out. We're taking Vanguard back to its roots. High luxury and absolute dominance. The camera panned to Victoria. She was sitting on a plush velvet sofa, sipping wine surrounded by board members. She offered a cold, triumphant toast to the lens. To family, Julian yelled, clinking his glass. And to getting rid of the bloodsuckers who thought they could ride our coattails forever. If you ain't family, you're a liability. I watched the video loop, studying the broker he was celebrating with, Mark Sterling, a man notorious for predatory commercial leases. Julian was preparing to sign massive expansion contracts tomorrow, completely blind to the trap. I quickly minimized the social media app and opened a highly secured, encrypted file titled Project Genesis. It was a comprehensive commercial lease registry cross-referenced with a Delaware entity called V Holdings LLC. The Vance family owned the retail group, but they didn't own the physical brick and mortar. Every single flagship location was leased from V Holdings LLC, and the sole absolute, undisputed legal owner of V Holdings LLC? Me. Ethan had set this up to shield the core assets from his mother's reckless spending. They thought they were paying rent to an institutional landlord. They had no idea they were paying a ghost company managed by my attorney. Julian wanted to secure a massive $10 million institutional bank credit line tomorrow afternoon, aggressively using the Fifth Avenue flagship lease as his primary corporate collateral. I turned off the phone screen. The room went pitch black, save for the sickly green neon light bleeding through the cheap plastic blinds. Let them drink their expensive champagne. Tomorrow morning the rent was going up, and those greedy heirs were about to find out exactly who owned the roof over their heads. The rain had slowed to a greasy gray fog by the time my yellow cab pulled up to the curb on Wall Street. The morning air was bitter, carrying the distinct New York scent of wet asphalt, roasted coffee, and exhaust fumes. I stepped out onto the slick cobblestones, my breath pluming in the damp cold. I hadn't slept a single second at the Starlight Motel. My eyes burned behind my sunglasses, and my limbs felt heavy from the damp chill. But inside my chest, my mind operated with the sterile, quiet precision of a high-frequency trading algorithm. I adjusted the collar of my damp silk blouse, took a deep breath of the freezing air, and walked into the imposing stone facade of Pendleton and Associates. The lobby was a sanctuary of old Manhattan wealth. Polished white marble floors reflected the soft, warm glow of recessed brass light fixtures. A silent security guard in a tailored suit nodded as I approached the private elevator bank. I swiped a temporary pass, stepped into the walnut-paneled car, and watched the digital floor indicator ascend to the 14th floor. When the doors slid open, the chaotic roar of the city vanished, replaced by the muffled, expensive quiet of thick Persian rugs and historic legal victories. Arthur Pendleton's corner office smelled exactly like it had for the last 30 years. Aged leather bindings, premium Cuban tobacco, and exceptionally strong espresso. He didn't offer me a cliché, patronizing greeting. He didn't ask how I was holding up or offer his condolences for my sudden eviction. He simply pointed his silver Mont Blanc fountain pen at a high-backed mahogany leather chair, and pushed a steaming porcelain cup across his heavy, cluttered oak desk. "Drink it, Megan," Arthur said, his raspy voice cutting through the quiet room. He didn't look up from a thick stack of manila folders stamped with red confidentiality seals. "You look completely exhausted, but thankfully, your timing is absolutely flawless." I sat down, wrapping my stiff, freezing fingers around the warm porcelain cup. The bitter, dark espresso hit my tongue, sending a much-needed jolt of adrenaline straight to my nervous system. Did they sign the preliminary term sheet with the bank yet? Arthur finally closed the folder, leaned back in his leather chair, and let out a cold, deeply cynical grunt. He adjusted his gold-rimmed reading glasses, looking at me with a mixture of professional appraisal and paternal concern. Julian was standing outside Chase Manhattan's commercial lending division at 8 o'clock sharp this morning. He brought Mark Sterling with him as his lead real estate advisor. My contacts inside the bank confirmed they are fast-tracking a $10 million asset-backed line of credit. To secure that massive influx of liquid capital, Julian pledged Vanguard's primary commercial leases as his primary corporate collateral. He explicitly used the Fifth Avenue flagship location as his crown jewel to satisfy the underwriting committee. "He thinks he owns the board," I murmured, staring at the dark liquid in my cup. "He's a complete fool," Arthur stated flatly, his hand coming down firmly on the desk. He opened the top folder, revealing the original operating agreements from 6 years ago, signed in Ethan's bold, distinctive handwriting. Ethan knew exactly who his mother and brother were. He knew that if anything ever happened to him, they would treat Vanguard Retail like a personal piggy bank until the company bled out into total bankruptcy. That's why he created V Holdings LLC before you two even tied the knot. Arthur turned a thick, crisp page, pointing a manicured finger at a heavily highlighted legal paragraph. "Look at the corporate veil here, Megan. V Holdings is a blind Delaware statutory trust. On paper, it is managed by an independent, anonymous third-party institutional trustee located in Wilmington. The Vance family has been dutifully paying $350,000 a month in commercial rent to this trustee for the past 5 years. They genuinely think they are dealing with a faceless international institutional landlord group. They have absolutely no idea that the Wilmington trustee answers exclusively to me, and that the sole, absolute economic beneficiary of V Holdings LLC is you." I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto the microscopic fine print of the master lease agreement. Explain the trigger clause to me again, Arthur. I want to make sure there are no loopholes they can exploit. Section 14.4. Arthur whispered, a thin, dangerous smile touching his lips. The material change in corporate control provision. Ethan insisted on inserting it himself during the final negotiations. It explicitly states that if Vanguard Retail Group undergoes a significant change in its chief executive leadership or primary managing trustees without the prior, written, notarized consent of the landlord, meaning V Holdings LLC, the lease immediately enters an automatic, non-curable technical violation. A technical violation, I repeated, the sheer brilliance of my late husband's foresight settling into the room. And what are our immediate legal remedies under that specific clause? Two things that will utterly destroy their entire financial reality, Arthur said, tapping the document with his pen. First, the landlord possesses the absolute legal right to retroactively reevaluate the rent to hypermarket emergency rates backdated to January 1st of the current fiscal year. In simple terms, their $350,000 monthly rent for the Fifth Avenue flagship instantly skyrockets to $1,050,000 a month. Retroactively, they suddenly owe V Holdings a backrent deficit of over $4.2 million, payable in full within 72 business hours. I stared at the black and white figures on the spreadsheet. It was brutal. It was total financial execution. And the second remedy? The landlord can immediately demand an unconditional cash security deposit equivalent to 12 full months of the new rent rate to cover increased tenant operational risk, Arthur explained, his voice entirely flat and clinical. That's another $12.6 million. If they fail to wire the total funds into the trustee's designated escrow account within 5 business days, the lease automatically terminates. The landlord takes immediate, physical repossession of the property, including all fixtures, inventory, and luxury equipment inside. The gravity of the situation pressed down on the quiet, elegant office. Think about the chessboard right now. Julian is currently sitting in a lavish glass-walled boardroom at Chase Manhattan, signing a $10 million loan. The bank is issuing that capital based on the legal assumption that Vanguard has a secure, long-term, low-cost lease on Fifth Avenue. If that lease is suddenly declared in default and terminated, what happens to the loan? It triggers a catastrophic cross-default clause. The bank will instantly freeze Vanguard's corporate accounts, recall the entire loan amount, and seize Julian's personal assets since he signed as the primary guarantor. But this is where the story takes a sharp, morally gray turn. Every single action in this game has an equal and opposite reaction. If I pull this trigger, Vanguard Retail will collapse into absolute chaos within a week. Over 200 floor employees, cashiers, stock clerks, visual merchandisers, everyday people who have families to feed, will lose their health insurance and their livelihoods right before the harsh winter season. They didn't do anything to hurt me. They were my team. They respected me, and I protected them for years. Let me ask you a blunt, honest question right now. If you were standing in my damp shoes, looking at the legal paperwork that could completely ruin the malicious people who destroyed your life, would you hesitate? Would you worry about the collateral damage of innocent workers? Or would you pull the trigger without a single ounce of mercy? Some people might argue that sacrificing 200 innocent lives to destroy 2 greedy heirs makes me just as monstrous as Victoria and Julian. Is this true justice, or is it just pure, unadulterated revenge? What would you do if everything you built was stolen from you overnight? Let me know your thoughts, because for me, the choice was already carved in stone. Sign the formal notice of violation, Megan, Arthur said, pushing a thick, blue-backed legal document across the oak desk toward me. Once your signature is on this page, the Wilmington trustee will instantly issue the formal demand letters via certified electronic courier. There is no turning back from this point. Victoria will get the alert on her encrypted phone. Julian will get it while he is standing with the bank executives. I picked up the heavy Montblanc pen. The cool weight of the metal felt solid in my palm. The black ink felt thick, almost like blood on the stark white paper. I thought about my clothes sitting in those wet trash bags on the Astoria curb. I thought about the smug, arrogant smile on Julian's face when he told me I was just a line item to be erased from the ledger. I thought about Victoria's dead gray eyes as she coldly changed the digital locks to the home I had shared with my husband. They didn't care about my survival. They wanted me to starve in the dark. Why should I care about theirs? I pressed the pen to the paper. Megan Vance. My signature was steady, sharp, and absolute. Arthur took the document, checking the date and timestamps with meticulous precision. He nodded once, a look of profound, quiet respect appearing in his weathered eyes. It's done. The courier service is already queued up in our system. The digital delivery is scheduled for exactly 11:45 a.m. Why exactly 11:45? I asked, leaning back in the chair, watching him slide the signed document into a secure electronic scanner. Because according to my internal sources inside Chase, that is the exact minute the Commercial Lending Committee concludes their final compliance vote, Arthur replied, a dark, calculating glint appearing in his eyes. The loan officers will be handing Julian the finalized contract to sign. He'll be holding the pen, smiling, thinking he's just secured his future as a Manhattan billionaire. And right then, his world will completely end. I checked my watch. It was 10:15 a.m. We had exactly 90 minutes before the bomb detonated. What do we do now? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. Now we watch them scurry, Arthur said, reaching into his lower desk drawer and pulling out a pristine, high-end digital tablet. He tapped the screen, opening a private, encrypted digital audio feed. I kept an old security consultant on the Vanguard payroll. He left a live executive conference bridge open for us in the Fifth Avenue boardroom. Would you like to hear how the Kellen react when the trap snaps shut? I took the tablet from his hands, the cold glass smooth against my fingertips. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a cold, intoxicating rush of anticipation. The trap was set. The bait was taken. And the prey had absolutely no idea they were already bleeding. The digital audio bridge on Arthur's tablet hummed with a low static hiss. It was 10:25 a.m. Through the encrypted line we could hear the faint, muffled clinking of silver spoons against porcelain and Julian's loud, grating laugh echoing inside the private executive conference room at Chase Manhattan Bank. He was performing for the underwriters. Suddenly, my personal cell phone buzzed violently against the green leather blotter of Arthur's mahogany desk. The caller ID flashed with Julian's name. Arthur leaned forward, his silver fountain pen frozen mid-air. His gray eyebrows twitched as he gave me a slow, calculated nod. "The bait is in the water, Megan," he murmured, his voice as dry as autumn leaves. "Play the victim. Give them the absolute certainty that you are broken. Greed is a predator that only strikes when it senses total weakness." I swiped the screen and pressed the phone to my ear, intentionally flattening my posture, letting my shoulders slump to force my voice into a hollow, fragile whisper. "Julian. Megs. Glad you decided to pick up your phone." Julian's voice boomed through the receiver, dripping with unearned triumph and aggressive condescension. I could hear the distinct rustle of heavy legal bond paper, and the low murmur of corporate attorneys in the background. "Look, we're down here at the Chase headquarters on Pine Street. The compliance team is doing a final sweep of the Vanguard $10 million credit facility paperwork. There's a tiny, annoying legal glitch on the title report. A standard underwriting checklist item. Because you were married to Ethan, the bank's title insurance company wants a formal, signed waiver of any future spousal estate claims against Vanguard Retail Group. Just a standard indemnification waiver. You sign it, we give you a little parting gift, and we all move on with our lives." "I'm sitting in a tattered motel room in Astoria, Julian," I said, squeezing my eyes shut to simulate a cracked, trembling voice, though my fingers were gripping the edges of the desk with iron force. "You froze my checking accounts. You threw my clothes on the street under the rain. I don't even have enough cash to pay for a decent meal. How am I supposed to survive?" A short, muffled pause followed. I could hear the faint sound of Julian whispering to Victoria, followed by his mother's sharp, impatient sigh. Then Julian's voice returned, cold, mocking, and utterly dismissive. "Tell you what, Megs. We're not complete monsters. Victoria is willing to authorize a one-time $50,000 severance check right now. Hard cash value drawn on an estate sub-account. But there's a catch. You have to bring your pathetic self down to the 14th floor of Chase right now and sign this waiver before the Commercial Lending Board concludes its final vote at 11:45. If you try to fight us in probate court, our corporate lawyers will drag this litigation out for the next 5 years, and you'll starve before you see a single dime. What's it going to be, Megan? Dignity in poverty, or a clean exit with 50 grand. I let out a shaky, controlled breath, staring directly into Arthur's ice-cold, approving eyes across the desk. Fine, I whispered, making sure to sound thoroughly defeated. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Just, please tell Victoria not to cancel the check. I need the money for a deposit on an apartment. Smart girl, Julian sneered. His laughter cut short as he slammed the phone down. The line went dead. Arthur chuckled softly, a low rumbling sound in his chest. He slid a sleek black leather folder into my hands. Inside was the Certified V Holdings LLC lease violation notice, already stamped and primed for digital delivery. You missed your true calling, Megan. You belong on a theater stage. Now go down there and deliver the final act. I will monitor the electronic delivery from here. The moment the clock hits 11:45, the notification hits Victoria's secure email and the bank's lead compliance officer simultaneously. 20 minutes later, the heavy glass doors of the Chase Manhattan Executive Suite slid open. The atmosphere inside the 14th floor conference room was suffocatingly opulent. A massive polished cherrywood table stretched across the room, surrounded by high-backed ergonomic chairs. Huge floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping, panoramic view of the East River, shrouded in gray New York fog. Victoria sat at the head of the table, her diamond rings catching the harsh fluorescent lights as she flipped through a thick stack of loan documents. Julian stood near the window, holding a crystal glass of sparkling water, whispering with Mark Sterling, the predatory real estate broker. Two high-ranking bank vice presidents sat opposite them, looking over their spectacles with clinical boredom. When I walked in wearing my damp silk blouse and carrying my bag, the entire room fell dead silent. Julian's mouth twitched into a smug, satisfied grin. Victoria didn't even stand up. She merely tapped her manicured fingernails against the polished wood table. "You're late, Megan," Victoria said, her voice dripping with venomous satisfaction. She gestured to a single sheet of paper resting in the center of the table. "The board is waiting to execute the final funding sequence. Sign the spousal waiver so we can conclude this tedious family matter." I walked over to the table slowly, my wet leather heels clicking softly against the hardwood border. I kept my head down, my eyes fixed on the floor, letting them believe they had completely stripped me of my pride. I reached for the silver pen resting on the document, but my hand deliberately shook. "Let me stop right here and ask you something. Look at them closely. Look at the absolute arrogance dripping from their designer suits. Isn't it deeply fascinating how easily greed blinds the human intellect?" If Julian had spent just 5 minutes reviewing the historical corporate tax filings of Vanguard's flagship properties instead of populating his Instagram feed, he would have noticed the Delaware corporate shell. But he didn't. He was so consumed by the thrill of destroying me that he forgot to check the floor beneath his own feet. Would you have had the absolute emotional control to stand in that room, endure their mocking stares, and sign that paper just to make them feel invincible? Or would your pride have ruined the entire sting operation? "Is the $50,000 check real, Victoria?" I asked, keeping my voice small, vulnerable, and pathetic. Victoria let out a dry, aristocratic laugh, sliding a small slip of paper across the table. "It's right here, Megan. Signed by me. Consider it charity for your services to my son. Once you sign that waiver, you have no legal relationship to Vanguard, to Ethan's legacy, or to this family. You are officially non-existent to us." "Sign the paper, Megs," Julian urged, stepping closer, his expensive cologne filling my senses. He tapped the document with his gold signet ring. "The loan officers don't have all day. We have a $10 million expansion deal to close, and your little sob story is holding up the wire transfer." Picked up the pen. I pretended to read the legal jargon, letting my eyes skim over the phrases. "The undersigned hereby waives, releases, and forever relinquishes all marital, spousal, and probate claims against the operating assets of Vanguard Retail Group LLC." It was a perfect legal document for them. It completely protected their operational company. But what they didn't realize was that I didn't want their operational company anymore. I wanted their physical assets. I wanted the dirt they stood on. I pressed the pen to the paper and signed my name, Megan Vance. Julian snatched the document away the instant the ink left the page, inspecting my signature like a vulture checking a carcass. He turned to the lead bank vice president, A stern man named Mr. Abernathy. There you go, sir. Clear title. No encumbrances. No spousal liabilities from the previous marriage. Vanguard Retail is officially clean and ready for the credit line. Mr. Abernathy nodded, sliding the massive $10 million loan agreement in front of Julian and Victoria. Excellent. Sign here, Mr. Vance, as the primary corporate officer and personal guarantor. And here, Mrs. Vance, as the managing trustee of the family estate. Once these executed pages are scanned into our compliance network, the liquid capital will be wired directly into your operating treasury account within 15 minutes. Julian grinned like a child on Christmas morning. He unscrewed his custom fountain pen and slashed his signature across the guarantor line with aggressive, reckless pride. Victoria followed immediately after, her movements elegant, cold, and final. They had done it. They had locked the loan. They thought they had secured the empire. I quietly reached down, picked up the $50,000 severance check from the table, and tucked it into my handbag. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I turned around and walked out of the conference room, my posture straightening with every single step I took toward the elevator bank. The weak, broken widow vanished the exact moment the heavy glass doors closed behind me. I stepped into the elevator, pulled out my phone, and looked at the digital clock. It was 11:42 a.m. 3 minutes left. I walked out into the bustling, rain-slicked lobby of Pine Street and slid into the back seat of Arthur's waiting black town car. Arthur was sitting in the shadows, the digital tablet resting on his knees. The live audio feed from the Chase conference room was still active, broadcasting a soft background murmur of Julian laughing and congratulating Mark Sterling on their upcoming real estate venture. Did they sign? Arthur asked, his voice sharp and focused. They signed everything, I replied, leaning my head back against the leather seat, a cold, serene calm washing over my entire body. Julian signed as the personal guarantor for the entire $10 million. He put up everything he owns. Arthur checked his gold Rolex. The digital second hand ticked forward. 57, 58, 59, 11:45 a.m. The electronic certified servers have just deployed the notices, Arthur whispered. Through the tablet speakers, the atmosphere in the Chase conference room changed instantly. A sharp, rhythmic chiming sound echoed over the feed. It was the sound of multiple corporate email accounts receiving high priority, encrypted legal alerts simultaneously. What the hell is this? I heard Julian's voice say, his tone shifting from arrogant celebration to mild confusion. Mom, your phone is buzzing. Abernathy, your laptop just went off too. A long, agonizing silence stretched over the audio feed. I could picture Mr. Abernathy's eyes scanning his screen, his professional smile freezing into a mask of pure terror. I could hear the rapid tapping of a keyboard as the bank's lead compliance officer opened the official legal correspondence from V Holdings LLC. Mr. Vance. Mr. Abernathy's voice came through the speaker, completely stripped of its previous warmth. It was hollow, sharp, and terrifyingly official. We have an immediate, catastrophic compliance hold on your funding sequence. Stop the wire transfer right now. What? Why? Julian stammered, his voice cracking slightly. We just signed the contracts. The title is clean. The title is not clean, Mr. Vance, Abernathy snapped, the sound of paper slamming onto the cherrywood table echoing through the feed. Our compliance legal department just received a formal notice of material change in corporate control and lease violation from V Holdings LLC, the master landlord of your Fifth Avenue flagship property. It states that by removing Megan Vance and appointing yourself as CEO without the landlord's prior notarized consent, Vanguard Retail is in immediate, non-curable default of its lease agreement. V Holdings. Victoria's voice cut through the air, sharp, frantic, and laced with sudden panic. That's just an institutional landlord group in Delaware. Who cares? We can just pay a fine or talk to their agents. You don't understand, Mrs. Vance, Abernathy said, his voice dropping into a dead, chilling tone that signaled total financial ruin. Under Section 14.4 of your master lease, this default automatically escalates your monthly rent from $350,000 to $1,050,000, retroactive to January 1st. You currently owe a backrent deficit of $4.2 million, due in 72 hours. Furthermore, They are demanding a $12 million cash risk deposit within 5 days. That's impossible, Julian shrieked, the sound of his crystal glass shattering against the floor cutting through the audio feed. That's $16 million. We don't have that kind of liquidity. That's what this $10 million loan was supposed to help cover. There is no loan, Mr. Vance, Abernathy stated coldly. V Holdings has already filed a lease pendens and a lease termination. Notice, your primary collateral for this credit facility is legally invalid. Under the bank's cross-default regulations, because you signed as the personal guarantor, Chase is freezing all Vanguard operating accounts and your personal estate accounts immediately to protect our capital. We are canceling the wire. No, you can't do this, Julian screamed, his voice dissolving into absolute, unadulterated terror. Who the hell is V Holdings? Who is behind this company? In the back seat of the quiet town car, I leaned closer to the tablet, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my lips as I listened to their world completely disintegrate. The chess pieces had moved exactly where I wanted them. The greedy heirs had walked right into the meat grinder, and I was the one holding the switch. I turned to Arthur, my eyes reflecting the cold gray light of the Manhattan fog. Drive, I said softly. Let's go to the flagship store. It's time to show them who really owns the keys to the castle. The car pulled away from the Wall Street curb, melting into the dark, chaotic flow of the city traffic, leaving the ruined remains of the Vance Empire far behind us in the glass towers above. The real slaughter was about to begin. The black town car glided to a halt in front of Vanguard's flagship store on 5th Avenue. Through the rain-streaked window, the 3-story storefront looked cold, a monument of limestone and steel. Inside, bright halogen lights illuminated high-end apparel, but the floor staff felt visibly fractured. Word of the bank freeze had traveled fast. Employees huddled in small groups, whispering under the display lights. Arthur opened his door, stepping into the cold drizzle. I followed him, my wet leather heels clicking firmly against the pavement. I didn't look like the broken widow they discarded yesterday. We walked through the heavy glass entrance, the warm perfume-scented air of the showroom hitting my face. Mrs. Vance, a voice called out. It was Marcus, the floor manager I hired 3 years ago. His eyes were wide with anxiety, his tie askew. The corporate office ordered us to halt all transactions. There's a system glitch and the regional manager isn't answering. What is going on? Go to the back office, Marcus, I said calmly, resting a hand on his arm. Gather the staff. Tell them their payroll for this week is fully guaranteed by an independent escrow account. Nobody is losing their job today. But I need you to lock the front doors. No customers for the next hour. Marcus blinked, looking at Arthur, then back at me. He saw the cold authority in my eyes. Yes, ma'am, he whispered, turning quickly to execute the order. We walked toward the private elevator at the back, ascending to the executive level. As the doors opened, the sound of glass shattering echoed down the hallway. Julian's voice was hysterical, screaming obscenities into a speakerphone. We walked into the main boardroom. The room was a total disaster. Pre-construction blueprints for their expansion plan were scattered across the glass table. Victoria stood by the window, her face pale, her perfectly styled hair slightly unraveled. Julian was wild-eyed, his designer jacket discarded, sweat pouring down his forehead. Mark Sterling was already gone, having abandoned ship the moment the bank canceled the wire transfer. Where is that coward Arthur Pendleton? Julian screamed, slamming his fist onto the table. He's the trustee's point of contact. I'll sue that old bastard until he's living in a shelter. You won't be suing anyone, Julian, I said, stepping into the room. Julian spun around, his eyes bloodshot. He looked at me, then at his mother, his chest heaving under his custom shirt. Megan, what the hell are you doing here? Did you bring your little check back to beg for more? Get out. We are dealing with a corporate emergency. The emergency is sitting right in front of you, Arthur said, stepping forward with absolute composure. He unzipped his briefcase and laid 3 certified legal folders onto the table. Let me introduce you to your master landlord. V Holdings LLC is a private statutory trust established by Ethan Vance. And this woman right here, whom you evicted from her home yesterday, is the sole, absolute managing director and economic beneficiary of that trust. The room fell into a horrifying dead silence. The only sound was the mechanical hum of the building's climate control system. Victoria froze. She turned slowly, her manicured fingers gripping her coat so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her gray eyes darted from Arthur to me, searching for a lie, but finding only a wall of cold, unyielding reality. "What?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "No. That's a fraudulent claim. Ethan wouldn't hide assets from his mother." "Ethan loved his grandfather's legacy," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a razor blade. I walked over and sat down at the head of the table. "But he despised your insatiable greed. He knew that the moment he was gone, you would bleed this company dry to fund your lifestyle. He built the corporate shield to protect the physical stores. He made sure I held the keys to the land, the brick, and the mortar." Julian stumbled backward, his hands shaking violently as he pointed at me. You set us up. You knew about the lending committee meeting. You intentionally waited until we signed the personal guarantees." "I merely enforced the exact terms of the lease that your grandfather drafted," I replied coldly. "You chose to violate the material control clause by illegally terminating my role and declaring me an outsider. You chose to frame me for financial malfeasance to justify your cruelty. Every single card played in this game was yours, Julian. I simply let you play them until you ran out of chips." Arthur stepped up, tapping the top folder. "Let's look at the financial reality. You currently owe V Holdings LLC $4.2 million in back rent, due in 72 hours. Chase Manhattan has pulled the credit facility. Because Julian signed the absolute personal guarantor clause, the bank is currently initiating the seizure of your personal properties, your luxury vehicles, and your private investment accounts to cover default penalties. By Friday morning, Vanguard Retail will face complete commercial foreclosure, and both of you will be personally bankrupt." Victoria collapsed onto the velvet sofa, her face entirely hollowed out by fear. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Megan, please. We are family. Ethan's memory. You can't destroy his family's name. We can find a compromise. We will give you whatever salary you want." "Family?" I let out a soft, sharp chuckle. "You defined the parameters of family yesterday, when you threw my life into trash bags on a wet sidewalk, Victoria. You told me I was non-existent. You told me I was just a line item to be erased." Julian dropped to his knees beside the table, his arrogance completely shattered into pathetic desperation. "Megan, please. If the bank forecloses, I'm ruined. I owe money to private investors. They will destroy me. Just waive the lease violation. Please." I looked down at him, experiencing absolutely no sense of triumph, only a deep feeling of clean, absolute corporate legal justice. "I have an agreement prepared," Arthur said, sliding a document across the table. "Transfer 100% of your remaining equity to Megan Vance right now, and V Holdings will forgive your entire debt. You have 2 minutes or we let the foreclosure proceed." Julian grabbed the pen, scribbling his signature in sheer panic. Victoria wept silently as she signed away the family empire forever. "Marcus is waiting downstairs," I said flatly. "He has trash bags ready for your things. Security. We'll escort you out via the freight elevator in 10 minutes." They walked out like ghosts, completely stripped of their power and pride. I looked out the window at the skyline. I had won the match, but a quiet question settled in my mind. To protect this company, I had to become just as cold and calculated as the people who tried to destroy me. Did the righteous end truly justify my ruthless means? What do you think? Did I take this financial revenge too far? Or did these greedy heirs get exactly what they deserved? Drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit subscribe to follow my journey. Remember, never underestimate a woman who reads the fine print.